Hey, what's going on? Congratulations, Pinky. We're so excited that you got to win the Destiny 2. Like as soon as Pastor Mark,
I'm not excited.
AKA TheLift, he heard that was happening. He's like, I gotta get in on this.
Yeah, hang on, man. Don't speak for me, man. I'm not excited for Pinky. What do you do? I mean, good job,
I can
Pinky.
tell you were defeated. I can see it.
I'm hurt. I'm wounded. Pinky's wounded me. I don't know who they are, but they've wounded me deeply.
Congratulations, Pinky, though. We're so excited that you get to enjoy that. Obviously, you're an amazing part of our community, and we love you, bro. Dude, Sonny, you're a beast. Like $100 a month is no joke, period. But then matching like up to $1,000 basically of people's reoccurring giving is absolutely insane. So thank you. Well, anyway, before I ignore, the amazing, am I looking the right way? I never know what this looks like on Twitch.
What way are you trying to?
This way.
What are you trying to look at?
If I go this way.
Look at your camera.
Like if I stand this way, right?
You have a camera, right?
But see, now I'm looking towards you on screen. I have a camera, of course.
Everyone knows you're talking to me, bro. Just look at your camera.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Look at them.
Thanks for teaching me.
No problem. I'm a streamer. I stream on twitch.tv. I don't know if you probably don't know about it, but I stream on there. So yeah.
Yeah. No. That's like the funny joke between me and chat. Like when I get on for our daily reconnects and stuff, like I pretend to do this. I don't actually know what I'm doing at all. Just straight.
Yeah. My mom set this up. She said, you just click go live here. And I fix her printer. She fixes my live stream. It's great.
I like it. It's perfect. Anyway, this is Pastor Mark, aka lead pastor of Lux Digital, another church within the interwebs, and he's also goes by TheLift. I really like more people to start calling him TheLift.
No, I don't lift anything, so it wouldn't make any sense. The guy who doesn't lift and puts on weight in his 30s would be a more accurate term for what I do in life.
It should be dad bod. That should be the name.
Yeah, I rock that. My wife doesn't love it as much as I do, but I feel like I can rock it okay.
So where did the lift come from?
The lift came from when my wife and I were dating. We did a road trip. I'm from Pittsburgh. We did a road trip down to like North Carolina, Virginia together. And I went on my computer on iTunes. I know people don't use that anymore, right? But I went on iTunes where I owned music, and I took the bomb track from every album that I had. And there was 113 albums that I had at the time. So I had 113 6 CD mix called the 113 Lift because it had 113 songs on it. Just as a joke that became our Wi-Fi whenever we got married. And then it just kind of became my screen name. And then when I started making content, everyone's like, literally no one wants to say that. Get rid of the numbers. So we got rid of the 113 in the middle, and I became the Lift, and I hate it. So I just, like, everyone knows me. I just say, like, just call me Mark. Like, you don't need to call me the Lift. Some people come into my stream like, you do even lift, bro, and I'm like, I do not. I don't lift anything, actually. So
I literally don't.
I literally don't. No.
So when you think of lifting, that's funny because like we have two different. When I think of the lift, I think of like an elevator.
Hold on. Well, you know what? That was the
you're
theme,
elevating
right?
people, right? That's the idea. That's right.
Yeah. That was the theme, because it was like we are on floor 5. It was CD 5, or we're on level 5, floor 10, and it was like the 10th track on the 5th CD or whatever. So that was the idea. It was like an elevator, which is a very British posh way to say elevator, right? To take the lift. I don't say anything in a British accent, so don't ask me to try.
Try it. Just give it a try.
No, I'm not going to do it live on the internet. No, there's a lot of things I'll do live on the internet, but like eat a raw onion, put on a penguin suit, pretend I have a British accent. Those are 3 things I don't do on the internet.
Okay. Yeah, the raw onion's rough. Shout out Solux, appreciate you. The penguin suit, man.
I love that you guys rigged that, by the way, so that Solux is the only one who has to do something disgusting, and she just has to keep eating onions. Like, kudos to you guys for just setting that up.
Well, she's paying penance, for the years she didn't do it. So it's the way it is. No, it's not rigged, chat. Everything is random. Don't believe the enemy. Oh man. So okay, that's interesting. That story was way more boring than I thought it was going to be. So
it's not great.
I'm just kidding.
It's not really a great story. So feel entertained and give here at GodSquad Church, where we tell bad stories and invite guests on that aren't interesting. So it's perfect.
No, not at all. No, to be like completely honest, like I love Pastor Mark. You know, I've gotten to know him over this past year, at least decently more than I did in the past. And seeing your heart for the Lord, and just like your heart for unity, watching how you move is like spectacular, and it's uplifting. Like, not to be funny, but it is, and it makes me want to be better. And so I really do appreciate it. And then I love his personality, man. I love your sarcasm. I'm like, that's how I jive. That's who I am. Like, I'm not all like, I'm not the kind of guy that puts on the suit and like tries to be professional. That's just not who I am. I'd much rather be myself and be real. And I feel like you're authentic and you're real. And so,
yeah,
you know,
I said
I
a cuss
appreciate
word by accident during a sermon in the first 6 months of Lux. So if you're looking for that, you know, we're the right shop, right? But it's so heated during a sermon.
So I've never sworn on while preaching.
That's good.
Actually,
That's good.
to be
Don't
very
practice it.
honest with you, I don't know. It depends on what you think a swear word is, but I am actually known for not swearing ever, and I hold that as a badge of honor. That's my pride on my chest. You know, I am just better than everyone. No, there's a thing with my friends. They're like, why don't you just like, it's not a big deal. And I'm like, no, to me it is. I don't know. When I was 13, I literally remember the day that I was like, I'm never going to cuss again. And from that point on, I was just like, dude, it doesn't even like come up in my head. And so I face an extreme amount of other things and sins that I wish I wasn't facing.
Yeah, we were in different Boy Scouts, man. I don't know. My badge of pride comes from the fact that I do occasionally cuss. So I'm sure. I don't know. We were like very different Cub Scout troops. I don't know which one I was in, but I got a badge for a different thing. I don't.
Oh my goodness.
Not sure where it came from. But.
Well, that's the things. I think in my hood where I grew up, and like I don't say that funny. Like I grew up in the hood. It was the cool thing to do. But it's like, I don't know. I came to this point one day where I remember seeing someone successful on TV and the way they were holding themselves. And I was like, dude, all of these guys that say they're successful around my hood, like they act like this and they have no money, and they talk about having money and they don't have money and they don't have success, and they're still living in the same, you know, crack house that they've always lived in. And so I was like, I want to be more like that guy. And so it didn't even come from like Jesus. It came from like this idea of like, I wanted to be successful. And then obviously when I rolled into faith, I was like, oh, okay, I probably shouldn't be saying things that I don't necessarily mean, or saying things out of anger, because like anybody, I have my own anger and I have emotions. I'm a real human being. And so, yeah.
Well, bro, TJ, I appreciate you saying that, you know, we've built a relationship, have an affinity. I totally agree. I think we have a really similar heart. But, you know, hey, here at Lux and from myself, we love GSC. We love what you guys are doing. We have a big heart for it. Part of our story involves being inspired in some ways by what we saw GSC doing and what we still see GSC doing. There's a lot of ways in which, you know, our environments and our cultures and our churches are differ. But there's a lot of ways in which they're similar, because I watched the way that GSC was doing things. I was working at a physical church. I had been there for almost a decade at the point that I found GSC. I started sort of observing and watching from a distance, and kind of watching what the staff was doing and how it is that you were doing it. And so when God began moving in our hearts to plant an entirely digital expression of the church, and we began exploring what that would look like and talking to organizations and really trying to jump in on that, at least a decent portion of our model and how we organized our week and things came from watching GSC, both in successes and watching things that I was like, I would tweak that, or I would do this differently, or I think this will be different for the community and the person that I need to speak to, because we speak to a very different one, right? You guys have a one, you're speaking to that one, and our one looks a little bit different. Like the person that we're targeting looks a little different. So there's elements of us look very different, but I think that there's a very similar spirit between what GSC does and what Lux does. And GSC has been part of the inspiration and part of just the learning process of what it means to be a digital expression of church. I was a gamer my whole life, always viewed that to be an opposition of my faith. And honestly, I gamed to escape people, not to connect with people. And it wasn't until we planted Lux that I had been off social media for 5 years before we started the church. So I really didn't do much with it. So when we got back into it, man, and I stepped into this world, GSC was really part of the guiding force for when we were sort of forming at least the heartbeat of what we're doing now. And so always indebted to GSC, and love you, love Matt and Amanda, and care. My wife loves Amanda. I love Matt, man. Like, we just have a sweet spot in our heart for pioneers and people who are willing to step out and do something that no one's done. And we believe that those positions, no matter how old they are, what their experience level is, deserve and are deserving of positions of honor. And honestly, especially Amanda, who's been along for the ride. And you know, a lot of times wives are along for the ride. They didn't get the they didn't get to pick the car that they rented to go on the ride, right? They got no pick in it. And so have a huge heart for them and a huge heart for the church. So pumped to be here, part of Waymaker Week, glad to be doing it. And you know, hey, as we're talking today, guys, be supporting Waymaker and help GSC continue to do what they're doing.
Amen, man. Amen. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey, and it's been so cool to watch ministries sprout out and then, you know, hear those kind of like those words. Like, I don't think the 12 of us, when we first launched GodSquad Church, you know, 6.5 years ago, were thinking in any way, shape, or form that like it would turn out like this. Like, we had vision, man. You know, we're millions of gamers kind of vision, and we still do. But I just don't think that, you know, I didn't, I guess, put it in my purview that there was going to be other people that came alongside in this mission and started to like pop up. And so it wasn't until, you know, a few years later where we started seeing that. I was like, oh, like, yeah, other people are called to do this too. And so it's been so cool to watch different expressions of the church kind of start to happen on Twitch or YouTube or wherever else, you know, reaching, you know, nerd culture, or reaching gamers, reaching the people that live on the interwebs. You know, now we see like social media churches that are like reaching people like just in TikTok. And, you know, now we have specific game churches that are like, I just was listening to a podcast about, I can't remember her name, and I apologize, whatever your name is, but she has a church in Final Fantasy 14. And that's what she does every week. And so like specific game churches, it's just super interesting. But through all of the things and the things that we do specifically, right? We would both call ourselves by office a pastor. And I think a lot of people would call us that too, or hopefully think of it that way.
If they don't, I kick them out of my church. No, I'm just joking.
That's good. Everybody knows you're kicked out, man. And so in this world of like pastoring, you know, the title of today's talk, and I know we're deep into it, but the title of today's talk is Why God, Why People? And I've often asked myself that throughout like my years of ministry of like, you know, it'd be so much easier if I just had to like crunch numbers, or I just had to like people are difficult, man. And they can put you through the ringer. And the funny thing is there's like this crazy spectrum of like, I've met the most vile, terrible, absolute like demon like people on one side, and God still loves them. And on this side, I've met the most gracious people that walk through life like, you know, some Lord of the Rings type character of elegance and character and greatness. And it's so interesting because you can deal with both. I can deal with both in the same day. And, you know, trying to figure out how to navigate those relationships can be really difficult. Navigating around people are very difficult. But Pastor Mark, like, tell me a time in your life, like, where is a time where you've dealt with someone difficult? Give us a story.
I mean, man, you're pastoring, you deal with difficult people every day. And like, it just determines that like I think that a lot of people, they don't really understand the capacity at what ministry actually looks like until you're in leadership. Like when you're in leadership and you're stepping into a church and you're like, now you're serving, you're leading a team, you're investing in people, like then you begin to unpack what a pastor it has to work through. And I really, I connect it very closely to like shifting gears, right? Except your gears aren't like first, second, third, fourth. As a church leader, your gears are, I'm going from a fundraising conversation to connecting with a pastor who's struggling morally, to connecting with someone who's super pissed at me and like they're done with my church because I'm a total and complete piece of garbage, despite the fact that I've invested a tremendous amount of time and energy into them and they've been difficult from the beginning. And then you're shifting gears and you're like, I'm with one of my key volunteers and now I have to be like, I want to rah root you on and send you out and cast vision and let's go, right after I came out of a conversation where someone was just beating me into the ground telling me I was a piece of crap. And so I think more than anything, it is the whiplash of relational fatigue that is very, very difficult in leadership, period, but certainly in spiritual leadership, because you have people who come from such a wide variety and ranges for what they've dealt with. And this is exasperated by the digital church, right? This is exasperated in this context because you add in the variety of cultural nuance, right? And so like learning, and there's some cultural things that are just true. Like I have some of my Canadian friends and are part of our church and core members of our team. The way they communicate is just different. Is just different than the way some of my American team members communicate, which is different than some of how our European attendees will communicate. And what they say, not only the words are different, but the context is very different. And so understanding, because you could just be, you could very easily hurt as a pastor, because, like, I think it's really damning to be in a leadership as a pastor and to have insecurities. It's very, very difficult to function as a leader for any length of time inside of in a spiritual leadership capacity with insecurities, because they get called out so very easily by people in your life that are difficult. I was literally just hanging out with somebody today, and I was talking about a staff member that was just hard. It was just, and I'm not going to get into details, but it was just really, really hard. It was like you never knew what you were walking into. Every, monthly meeting, I would be walking into it and I need to take a nap afterwards, because the experience of just talking to this person for an hour was so emotionally draining sometimes that I would just walk out and be like, I have nothing left to offer you today. And the problem is, when you're a pastor, you're constantly being requested to pour out, right? And people assume that they're the only person who's asked you to pour out today is really the problem, when they don't realize that you've had multiple sources. And so, without getting into really specific details about people, and I think there's one couple in our church right now that would be okay with me sharing some of their, like, they were just in a bad place, right? And I think this goes, we all know this, right? Hurting people hurt people. It's a saying that we use all the time. We had a couple just in a really bad place. After a year of our church, they launched with us, they left. 9 months later, they're back around right now, and they want to begin serving again. And we've had some conversations about that. But the process of them leaving was very hurtful, because I had invested a lot of time and energy and prayer into those relationships. And I felt like that backfired. And it's really hard as a pastor or a ministry leader to not get in that whiplash and then just quit investing, because that back and forth is so hard. But how about you, Daylight? Do you have not speaking about anybody in chat specifically? No,
I'm specifically calling him out. Vic Sigma, that guy.
Yeah, right. I don't think out of all the people, I don't think it's Vic's.
Out of all the people, like, that's why I chose him, because like someone wasn't wouldn't be feel attacked. Yeah, it was the safest pick. No, Vic's is life-giving every conversation I've ever had with him ever. That's just facts. But man, it's just like some of the things you were saying there are so good, right? It's just like, I do think sometimes people just don't understand that you've already went through the ringer so many times, and like they don't see that you're just hanging on by a thread, right? Or you're just like empty, and like they're trying to pour out something, and it's like agonizing from you. And rather than taking from the cup that you're pouring, they're just like cracking the cup and they're just breaking it. And so I think in our position, I think we have this on the extreme. And I'm sure, like, in life, if you're working, you're 95% of the time going to be working with people. And so, and
there's always going to be people in your life that are hard to love, whether you're an engineer or you're working, you're doing garbage pickup, or you're a pastor. Like and oftentimes it's the dude who's driving the garbage truck and you're a Christian and you're the one who's heaving the trash. That's sometimes the hardest relationship to maintain, right? Like, how do I love this dude who's like just hard to love?
Yeah. And so, obviously from our perspective, we have a little bit, like, we have to be, I feel like we are emotionally more open, and we have to be in order to like connect with people on a level. So, it might be different, but for so many people in chat, I'm sure that they can relate to like having to deal with difficult people. And, we don't always like navigate it well. And I'm one of those people that's very upfront and like my grace and mercy is definitely a limiting factor in my love. Um, and it's something that the Lord has been working on me for years and years and years, because I came from a background of like not really having the propensity or the room on my plate to have those things, because it would have caused me pain. And so, most people like have, if you come from any kind of like typical background, you might realize like when you're sensitive, when you're open, it's also a time for weakness. Now the Bible, I would say, is like promotes that weakness in you, that's good to have. But living in the world that I lived in and I came from, having that weakness could have been like life or death. And I don't say that like just nonchalantly. It was a very important thing. And so I've had to like remap my like entire inner child to try to understand and extend. So often when I'm speaking grace or mercy or truth, it's just a little bit more difficult in terms of like, I have to actually just do it, not even because I want to, right? Often we're motivated because of like just the fail safe of who we are. I'm often motivated because I know it's the right thing to do, even though I'm not feeling it in my heart. And then it's a dealing it with God of like, Lord, like, I just don't want to do that. I don't want to be kind. I don't want to do this. I don't want to care for this person. Like, I want them to learn from their mistakes, and trying to measure, life in that way can be pretty difficult. And I'm sure so many people in this chat, the exact same thing, where it's just like, I don't want to be kind today. I don't feel like it. This person's being an idiot. They're annoying.
I think there's a stark difference too between being kind and enabling poisonous behavior, right? And a lot of times the people in our lives that are hard to love, sometimes that's because like we have a hang up, right? Like sometimes we have biases, right? Where it's like, listen, I just don't like people that do X, Y, or Z. Like, I have a bias in my life. I struggle with middle-aged white American women. I'd struggle. Like, I just have a hard time with it. Like, I'd struggle with the limited perspective. I struggle with the entitlement. I struggle with all, like, and so if you come to me and you're like, you're like 48 years old and you're like in the suburban area and you're a white woman, like, I'm going to naturally just start with a struggle. There's an experience there. It's like, Mark, you need to be kind, compassionate, loving, and understanding. And some people are like, you're horrible. Like, it's like, no, I'm honest. And you have biases as well. You just don't want to acknowledge them. You have people that for years, it was like the jock, right? Because the jock picked on me whenever I was a kid. And so I didn't like jocks, right? Or like the frat boy. Like, I struggled with that personality. I just couldn't get around that. It would make me nervous, right? My wife, we'd walk into Moe's Southwest Grill and I would freaking tense up when the frat boy was in front of us in line. My wife's like, you need to chill. Like, you need to take a deep breath. But I think one of the other things that's really important is that a lot of Christians just need to learn is you got to learn the importance of personal responsibility and boundaries. And these are two things that, like, if you only know one and don't know the other, it's really, really unhealthy, right? So if you understand personal responsibility and you can take blame for your own biases and things that you have going on in your life, it enables you to not have to paint those things on other people to feel comfortable, right? You can make mistakes and it doesn't ruin who you are. You can acknowledge your faults and it doesn't destroy you. And it doesn't characterize you. You aren't your mistakes. Your mistakes are part of you, but they aren't who you are. And Amen. So those personal responsibilities that you have to be able to grasp and take, they allow you to develop empathy. That empathy allows you to be healthier in relationships. Boundaries, on the other hand, are saying, I refuse to pay the price for your bad decisions, right? And so in the top of that, right, is like, I'm a parent with a child in my house who's an addict, and I don't kick that child out of my house because I don't want them to be homeless. So I pay the price for their addiction. And until they pay the price for their addiction, they see no reason to stop being addicted. And so what you think is saving them from homelessness, saving them from jail, or saving them from death is enabling them to come to a place where they're going to be in one of those places. And you're prolonging it and you're suffering. So you're suffering on behalf of them when God intended when we make stupid choices that we suffer, right? There's this natural reaping and sowing. You make bad choices, you get to suffer. And that enables you to learn to not suffer. When we take responsibility for people, and if we keep it on ourselves and refuse to have boundaries, what that ends up doing is it enables them to continue in the poor decision making. It doesn't actually challenge them to change. Now, what happens is if you have firm boundaries but take no personal responsibility for things, you'll actually do the opposite. You'll actually heave the mistakes that you've made on other people and claim it as boundaries. If you have all responsibility and no boundaries, you'll enable and take responsibility for other people's mistakes without allowing them to pay for their own. So when it comes to loving people well, especially people that are difficult, and most of those people are boundaryless people, and most of them hang out on the internet. Just to be real, like they love the internet, right? And so when it comes to dealing with those people, you have to function with really high levels of self-responsibility, right? You have to be responsible for yourself, your actions, acknowledge those things, build empathy, and at the same time, you have to have very firm boundaries that you don't allow people to manipulate their way past, so that you can actually love them well. Because listen, we know Jesus said pair truth and love, pair truth and love, pair truth and love. We all know, right? Truth without love is legalism. Love without truth is smush, right? It's just, look, it's nothing. And so we have to learn how to pair those things together. And that's the best thing that you can learn how to do when it comes to dealing with difficult relationships.
Man, there's so much in that. And I hope everybody in chat just took something from that, because that's in the balance of the two things that you're talking about. If we don't have both, we're just losing in one aspect or the other. And, you know, if you're not beginning to take steps towards freedom in whatever area that is and reliance on God, then you're just going to be ran over. And it's like, I see that in the chat. It's like someone saying like, you know, if I was weak, I was just going to get ran over. But the truth is you're going to get ran over realistically if you're not setting up both. I like what you said about boundaries too, because I am firm on boundaries. And, you know, one of the things like I took hold of as a young pastor was like, I'm going to preserve my family time well. That I don't love when ministry runs over my family. And, you know, and that's, I've taken a lot of flack for it. Within just like life of like moving through things, is because, you know, constantly in the church world, you're being, I don't think manipulated is the right word, but you're almost being like made to feel, and maybe it is manipulation, and you're made to feel like you're less than if you're not willing to sacrifice everything. And on my chopping block will never be my family. My own life for sure, absolutely, but it will never be my family. And so it'd be much easier if we all were just able to live with reckless boundaries, and then, you know, have to pick up the pieces at the end. I think that's how some people think. But in the end, I don't want my family's pieces to be the things that I'm picking up. And so when we're talking about relationships, we're talking about setting up boundaries. You know, what are some ways that you do, some strategies, maybe techniques that you use to create healthy relationships with the people that like you're around all the time, whether that's your family, your friends, whoever else?
Sure. Yeah. Like I fail at it all the time, just like everybody else, right? I'm a pastor. That means I wake up every day and I fail to be the thing that people needed that day. Like every single day that happens, right? And this is nothing against what GSC is doing right now. Yeah. I told Daylight, my family time starts at 4 p.m. EST. It's 4:30 right now. Here I am. Because because this is important, right? I want to be here. I want to see Waymaker happen, and so like I'm here, and we're making it happen. And I'll go be with my family, and I'll be with my buddies. We're gonna play WoW tonight a little bit, and so that you know, that's happening. It's happening. When it comes to building boundaries, like I live with the continual thing in the back of my brain that says I'm insufficient, and that I'm not enough, and that I can't be there for enough people, and I can't be close to enough people that need to be close to them, and too many people depend on me. And what it really comes down to is this. When it comes to the relationships and that feeling, is that I believe that my role is to be the Holy Spirit. And so, in every time you shoulder a burden relationally that God was intended to shoulder, you always end up anxious, overwhelmed, and depressed. Like that's just the natural outcome, because it's like I'm trying to be infinite when I'm finite. And every time we try to be infinite as finite beings, we end up paying a price for that. And unfortunately for me as a pastor, like I don't learn that lesson easily, or I learn it for like 3 weeks and then I completely forget it and I unlearn it for another month. And so like, I get that. But when it comes to like, how do you actually develop healthy boundaries? I think there's two resources that are really, 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 really good. So when it comes to personal responsibility and understanding how you tick, Emotional Intelligence 2.0 is a test and a book that'll help you grow in emotional intelligence. And if you don't know what emotional intelligence is, you might know what intelligence is. Emotional intelligence is understanding who you are and who other people are, being able to connect those things together. It's a lot more than that, but it rates you in empathy. I'm a very high emotional. I'm not a very intelligent person. I'm a very high emotional intelligence person. So my emotional intelligence is really high in almost every area, except, as it turns out, impulse control, which I'm in like the bottom 3% of the population, evidently. Like 98 in every other one, 3% for impulse control. So like,
wow.
That's why I eat a bowl of cereal before I go to bed at midnight every night. And I get fatter because I just can't impulse control. The other resource for boundaries is literally a book called Boundaries by Henry Cloud. And I've bought this for my team members. I've shipped it to them like when they're dealing, because a lot of my team right now, and I don't know where like the average age for GSC is, a lot of our team is in their mid to early 30s and they're having kids. And the new boundary that comes up when you have kids is grandparents. And what I'm learning very quickly is the generation that raised millennials raised us without boundaries, and you know, my generation as a millennial got a bad rap for being boundaryless people and everybody got a trophy. What I'm learning is that generation that raised us without boundaries is because they don't have boundaries, and then that generation struggles to have boundaries with their grandchildren. And one of the things that my generation is having to learn is how to put boundaries in between our parents and our children so that we're actually doing some piece of raising them. And so what I do is I suggest to a lot of our family, and that's going to resonate. Like there's someone in your church that's in that scenario right now, because it's like the echoing story of millions of millennials in their 30s right now. Like get the book Boundaries by Henry Cloud, read it. It makes so much sense. It's so incredibly helpful. And they do like, I don't know, you know, it was like I Kissed Dating Goodbye. I know that guy like deconstructed or whatever. They did like I Kissed Dating Goodbye. I kissed Wow Goodbye. I kissed everything goodbye. There's a version of everything for it, right? Or maybe that was Every Young Man's Battle. That's what it was. Every young man's battle. There's every young woman's battle. Every, you know, 13-year-old without legs battle. There's a battle for everything. So Boundaries has one for everybody. There's like teenage boundaries, teenage girl boundaries, 70-year-old boundaries books. But Boundaries by Henry Cloud, really great book.
That's good. I think, you know, chat, don't take that, like, write that down. If this is something you're dealing with, like, write it down and go look on it for Amazon, ask for it for Christmas, like do whatever you got to do, you know, maybe treat yourself.
TGI Fishbowl, go read it. If you have it, read it.
Yeah. And so I actually have that book on my shelf. I don't know if it's in here or downstairs. I would love to just be able to flash it, just be like, I'm cool, but I don't have it around me right now. Boundaries, like, so like a lot of relationships as a whole, I guess, come and they're boiling down to a couple things that I'm hearing from this conversation. And I know obviously they're complicated, but it's about setting expectation and setting boundaries. That's basically where we're at within our relationships, whether that's with your family, that's with, you know, your girlfriend, that's with your, you know, coworkers, whatever that is. And I think that we've come to a place where there'll be a lot of relational tension. So me and my wife went through this, and I'm sure she'd be fine with me sharing this. And we had a lot of relationship tension because she would have unspoken expectations that I didn't know she had in her heart or her mind or her thoughts. And I never knew how to put words to it. So I didn't like, I could see this behavior in her, and I just like, I would sit there like, what do I do? What do I do with my hands? Like, I'm like, I don't know. How do I do this? Because it was like being told to take a test that had no directions. And we, you know, and I had the same things. And once I had language for it, I was like, oh, I do that same thing to her. And instead of saying exactly what I need or what I want or what I mean, I would, you know, just get angry or get frustrated when she wouldn't meet these like crazy expectations that I had. And so what I started realizing in my own life, my own relationship, specifically my romantic relationship with my wife, right? Like that relationship, that if I don't say anything, if I don't give her the tools that she needs to succeed in loving me, then I'm failing. And it pours into so many other aspects of our life, right? I went for a lot of years not having very close relationships because he's now deconstructed and divorced.
Yeah, that's my bad. I shouldn't have brought that guy up. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. You're talking about the guy who said kiss dating goodbye or whatever?
Yeah. He wrote that book.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
deconstructing divorce.
No,
Okay,
you're absolutely fine to
he's
bring
off
it
the
up.
deep end.
Well, and that happens. Like when you're not sure about what you've said and what you've done, and like it's the same thing. Like he didn't set up the proper things. Like, yeah, his story is an interesting one. But and we look at it in a marriage setting, in a marriage relationship, but then you start to branch that out further, that if you don't have expectations that are being spoken, if you're not communicating expectations well, if for me and Mark's relationship, if Mark came in, and I'm not saying he does this, if he came in every single time we were talking and just started like reaming me about how I could get better, this and that to him could be love. It's like, oh, get better, trying to elevate me. But if I'm the type of person that just doesn't take that like harsh criticism well, then I'm going to suffer for it. And if I never tell him like, hey man, your words, actually, the way you're speaking them is like actually creating in me like a discord, like I don't want to be around you. Then I'm just going to be stuck. I'm going to be stuck in this universe of like needing to be around people in our lives that we don't want to be around because they're doing things that we don't like, but we're too afraid to communicate them because often we're afraid of conflict. Talk to me a little bit about conflict, Pastor Mark.
Well, I'll expand on one thing you said first.
Yeah, absolutely.
People know what you say and do. They don't know what you think and feel. You are not around or married to or raising telepaths or empaths. You've got people around you, and those people, you cannot expect people to make decisions based off of thoughts and feelings if you refuse to turn them into words and actions. That's just communication 101. It's what I do in all of my premarital courses. You get that for free here today, GSC. Okay. Not that I charge for premarital counseling. Don't freak out. Okay. Pagan pastor charges for premarital counseling. I'm just saying, right? That's one of the things that we talk about when I do premarital. When it comes to dealing with conflict, it is so hard because every conflict looks different, right? I say that I don't have many gifts. I have a gift. I have the ability to talk and communicate effectively. And it just so happens to be the Swiss Army knife of ministry. I can use it for just about everything. And so for me, I just usually rely on my ability to step into a situation and navigate it and figure out a way to find a consensus. I had a buddy who came to us during COVID, right? And really good friend, and love him, his family. But man, dude, he came in to this meeting and he wasn't coming in to find a resolution. He was coming in to end a relationship. Like that was his intention going into it, right? And it wasn't even my relationship. It was someone else's relationship. And I stepped into the meeting to mediate. And by extension, I got put in the crosshairs. And so he eliminated our relationship as well. And it was one of those scenarios where it's like, I love deeply him, his family. But when it comes to conflict, sometimes we want to be like, well, you can only just step into conflict, and it doesn't always resolve itself. It doesn't always end pretty. Like both parties have to be open to or committed to unity at the end of the conversation. And if you're coming into the conversation predetermined that you're not ending well, it's not going to end well, right? And so like on our part as believers, we're called to go into those conversations with the intentions of ending it well. And if it's with another believer, I think we can call them out, if possible, to unity. If it's with a non-believer, our responsibility goes as far as I have to come into this with the intention of resolving it and finding a peaceful meeting, right? But if they don't, it's okay, right? I think sometimes as Christians, when it comes to conflict and it comes to relationship, we just expect everybody to act like Jesus, who aren't Christians. Like we can't somehow believe that like this person should act like Jesus when they don't claim to follow Jesus.
Right.
And so like we don't even expect ourselves to do that, and we should act like Jesus if we claim to follow Jesus, but then we assume that other people who don't act or don't claim to follow Jesus will act like him. And so like when you walk into those situations, and those are the conflicts, but it's like my experience has been like staying calm, acknowledging hurting people hurt people. So that's okay. Like there are going to be people out there who are going to try to hurt me because whether that's because I'm a pastor or I'm a friend or they think I'm weak, that I'm an easy target for them to vent their pain that is going on in other aspects of their life. I try to keep that in mind and remember that when I go into those scenarios. And sometimes, man, like that hurting, it doesn't even have to do with like they just, you know, their dog just died and now they're mad at you. Sometimes it's much more deep than that. Sometimes it's like my parents got divorced when I was 9, and I learned that to survive, I had to watch out for myself first. And despite the fact that I claim Jesus and I'm a volunteer at your church or I'm your friend here at work, if there comes a scenario where I feel like I need to put you before myself, I literally cannot do that. And you don't even know that you're walking in and you're stomping on that hurt, because Satan uses hurts in our lives to build spiritual strongholds in us. And those spiritual strongholds have tendrils like roots that go out into other aspects of our life. And you can actually trip on a spiritual stronghold in somebody else's life, and it doesn't even look, it's like a nerve ending. It doesn't even look like it's connected to the stronghold, but it is, right? It doesn't even look like it's connected to their childhood. It doesn't even look like it's connected back to that trauma. It doesn't even look like it's connected to that sexual abuse. But this thing that you tripped on, and it just triggers it, right? It blows up. It's like a landmine. You had no clue that you were near it. And sometimes in those difficult places and those things, you have to have self-awareness enough to know like this isn't me. And it's also not my responsibility as a follower of Jesus to add to the hurt, to point out to them that this isn't my problem. It's my responsibility to take ownership for the fact that I tripped on something that I didn't know was there, and to have compassion for this person, despite the fact that they're attacking me. I have to love them. But emotional intelligence and growing in that comes along with it, because you have to grow in emotional intelligence to be able to identify those things on the fly, especially in conflict.
That reminds me of this idea of like, you know, this, you know, young boy or young girl, and they're walking around, they see this animal and they pick it up and they hug it, and it's a porcupine, and then everybody being mad at the porcupine because that child decided they were going to hug it. It's like not realizing, you know, that porcupine is just being itself. It doesn't know any better. It, you know, it might even be trying to grow and just find a little bit of food, but we've taken upon ourselves to invade their lives, and then we're not happy with who they are or what they are. And yeah, man, if learning how to be around different people, because once you learn that a porcupine's needles are only one way, and that you can hug them technically, that there is like so much, like there's so much more that you can do. And so if it's the same thing with a person, right? If their tendrils look a certain way, if those connections look a certain way, and you know how to navigate the root system well because you care for the person, you're loving them, and you're learning how to be in their life rather than just hope the superficial relationship benefits yourself, then, you know, then that's when we see success. I think that's a beautiful way to think about it. And there's another thing you said there, and a thought you said, where this idea of like, we expect people to be like Jesus, but we ourselves don't expect ourselves to be like Jesus.
Sure.
I used to do this technique in some of the leadership trainings that I would do. And when we were talking about this idea, because pastors have a hard time with friendship. They just naturally usually have a really hard time with, like, when I mean friendships, I don't mean surface level friendships. I mean deep friendships, people to invade into their lives, because often we're told to be protective and so on and so forth, whatever. But so I would do this exercise, and I would say, you know, list out, you know, all the good qualities in a friend. Like if you were to have a friend today and you were to have a best friend, I want you to list out every quality that you would like to see in them. And, you know, these lists would get like crazy long, and they'd be like, I want them to be kind. I want them to be selfless. I want them to be loyal. I want them to be, you know, and they basically, by the end of it, this friend would have been, you know, Jesus himself resurrected. And so, and then I say, okay, like, I love this list. This list is like, I get it. I want all those things too. Now, how many of those things are you fulfilling on that list? And out of the 50 things someone might list, they meet like 7 of them.
Sure.
And the exercise isn't to make them feel bad. That's not the point, but it's to make them see that the expectation they have for relationships are astronomically like bent, because they don't even hold themselves to that same standard. And so if we're willing to, ask something from someone else, I think we need to be willing to go into the waters and do it ourselves as well. And so the first thing, some of the people here might be having, I know for us at GodSquad Church, we talk to people all the time. They're having difficulty finding healthy relationships. They're having difficulty just being friends with people or whatever else. And so one of the places are I guess, first steps in that, in my opinion, would be to start to make a list of what you would like in a friend, and then start to build those things in yourself and start to allow God to move in those areas in your life so that you can become the friend that you want to see, because then you'll attract the people I think that you're looking to attract. Because other than that, you know what I mean? If I'm a dirtbag, to be honest, I'm going to attract other dirtbags to me. Like, not many people are going to want to deal with the garbage that I'm bringing into the relationship. They would rather just walk around the corner and find someone that's going to be, better for them. Someone's going to push them forward. Someone that's going to elevate them. In the scripture, it says, greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. They're going to be looking for the people like that are willing to lay down their life for each other, and not always want or need or be greedy. And, I just think that that's a good point to pull out of what you were saying, because yeah, man, it's difficult. It's difficult. Like, I know even as myself, I'm 32 years old. I live in a relatively new area. And the only relationships I have are online relationships. I don't have any relationships IRL. And so trying to find those things at my age can be difficult. And so I guess, Pastor Mark, like, what are some of the ways that you create friendships right now? Like you said, you're going to go play WoW later with the buddies. Like, how did that stuff form? What did you do to get there? I'm sure there's so many people in chat that would love to hear it.
That's a hard question to answer, to be honest.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because there are some things in life that, like, and we've all had this experience, right? Where, like, if it's something that you do naturally, it's really hard to tell someone else how do you do it, because you don't have to do it. And I'm not saying like I'm such a good friend maker. I've just always been a community generator, right? Like, I've always wanted to include people. I just naturally see the best in people. I believe in people. I see things in people they don't see in themselves. Like, that's just how I'm wired, right? So I'm wired very relationally. And once again, you want that, like, grow in emotional intelligence, research it, get into it, because it makes a huge difference. So, when it comes to, like, how do you find those things? Like, I served in a physical church for 11 years. While I was there, I saw that church grow from a couple hundred people to about 1,000. I ran just a young couple small group. I had lived my life, devoted my life, poured my life into, like, you just got to serve people first off. Like, if you're just looking like, I need good friends so I feel better about myself, then you're not going to find any good friends. If you, like, want to find good friends because you want to pour into people and you believe in people and you love people, then you will find an abundance of friends, and you'll soon find that you literally do not have time for the relationships that you want to have time for. And I'm in that spot in life. So when my wife and I were leading a young adult small group, we had 20 couples in our groups. There's 40 people in our group.
Oh, geez.
And all of us at
That's
one
not
point
a small
had 2
group,
to
man.
3 kids. No, there's 40 people in our group, and there was like 52 children 9 and under in the group.
Oh my goodness.
And it just got to the point where it was just, like, insane, right? So and this is the other thing about relationships that people just, like, man, they cringe, they don't get it. I think it's like relationships have seasons. Relationships are very seasonal. And so, like, when I left my church after being there for 11 years, I have limited relational connectors, right? Like, I can only be close to so many people. Like, I just can't be close to every person. And so I had tons of relationships from 11 years of ministry in the same place, deep, deep friendships, and a lot of different ministries that I had led. And then when I left that, I said, we picked like 3. We picked like Todd and Jolie, Shane and Shannon, Jake and Kristen, and my senior pastor, Chris. And we were like, these are the relationships that we're taking with us into the next season. None of these relationships helped us plant Lux. None of them are involved at Lux. We intentionally left them out of Lux. And then I guess Justin and Kelsey, our next door neighbors, I'm really close with. He's my accountability partner. So like four or five couples that we kept in close proximity to us that we intentionally, for the most part, did not ask to be involved in our church because we knew we needed relationships from outside of our ministry in order to stay healthy. And so these are people that we continue to now. The rest of my relational connectors, I freed up. I cut so many relationships, and it wasn't being brutal or mean. I was just saying this. It's just not. It doesn't mean I don't love you or I don't have compassion for you. I do. I want what's best for you. I just recognize that when God is calling me somewhere new, I also know that he's calling me out of this grouping of relationships and into a new grouping of relationships. And understanding the ebb and flow of relationships enables you to not continue to hang on to those friendships you had from high school that impair you and make it impossible for you to build new relationships now, because you're always comparing them to those friendships you had from high school. You don't know how to go through a season of life where you don't feel like you have close friends, and these friends that you did have just aren't close friends anymore. They've changed, you've moved, you don't have time for one another. You got to find people in your life stage and the relational places that God has called you. So now my wife and I have developed a ton of relationships with people from Lux, but we've kept a couple of very key relationships. And it wasn't like a hierarchy thing. It was just like, we feel called that we are supposed to raise our children with these people. Two of them are couples with older kids, older daughters than ours, and we admire their daughters. So because they're teenagers and we admire them, we want our daughters to be like them. So we hang out with them because we want to see how to be like them. Two of the couples are just very close to us, and we want to raise our children with their children, right? And one of them is a spiritual mentor and father of mine. And so like we were just strategic in picking those relationships and investing in them. And I think like in some ways you have to be really intentional about the relationships that you let be a part of your life and how you're going to invest in them. Because if you're not careful as a Christian, you will naturally over time in a church inoculate yourself against non-believers. You eventually, this is what happens with every church. Every church plants, they grow because everybody who comes is new and they have unchurched friends. They bring their unchurched friends, their friends accept Jesus, then nobody has any friends who aren't believers anymore, and the church plateaus and then shrinks and dies. It's the lifeline of like so many 5-year-old church plants, right?
Yeah.
Because we spend so much of our time with Christians, and that's where we develop our relationships, that's where we feel comfortable, that we stopped going to the bar. And because we stopped going to the bar, we stopped meeting people who aren't followers of Jesus. I'm going to say the bar because Jesus would have went to the bar. And so for me, like that's a big part of my heartbeat with Lux, and a big part of my heartbeat is like, I spent years inoculated against non-believers, just literally didn't have time for them. And now I spend my life investing in people who don't yet know Jesus. I play Dungeons and Dragons with them, hang out with them, we game together. I spend time investing in their lives because we want to be a church that reaches people who don't know Jesus. And so do you guys. And so does your church. And so should you if you're a follower of Jesus.
Absolutely.
So like, just be really intentional about your relationships that you do have. If you feel like you're having a hard time making friends, like, you might have to look in the mirror and fix some stuff. You might need to take some personal responsibility for your own shortcomings. Like Daylight's right. Like you might just suck. Like
he said it on me.
Yeah. It's like, I can't make any friends. Well, do you suck? Like literally, do you suck the life out of everybody that's around you?
Yeah.
Stop it. And you're like, I can't stop it. Go get counseling. Like go get help. I have a counselor. I see my counselor once a month. Why? Because if I don't see my counselor once a month, I get super angry. Right? I'll just get frustrated and mad with Christians. And so like, get help, like get the help that you need, start building relationships. Relationships aren't built for you. You're built for the people. And so like, stop expecting relationships to serve your needs and start realizing that you're built to serve other people. And then get yourself in a healthy enough place that you can start serving other people, you know? The
Super
harsh
good,
truth.
man.
Yeah. GodSquad. I'm sure that's Amanda behind the keys there. Yeah, if you didn't want like just real and brutal, like you invited the wrong pastor on, I guess, right?
No, that's just me typing to like, you know what I mean, keep the conversation amped. Could you imagine? Man, Mark, I love you, dude. I really do. I appreciate your
what
heart.
time are we supposed to be done? How long are we chatting here? Is this?
We're wrapping up because you got to get home to your kids and your wife. Pastor Mark's wife said she was going to kill me. No, I'm just kidding. She didn't say anything.
No, my wife.
But...
well, no, she probably wouldn't. She probably wouldn't.
She probably wouldn't. She'd think about it.
She would tell me maybe.
but preserve his time. And I think the conversation was excellent. I think if you didn't get something out of this, I don't know what to tell.
I just
I'll
got
tell
a
you.
DM on Discord from my video director, Greg, who's sitting right there, that says, Jen wanted me to tell you that dinner will be ready in 15 minutes. So
I'm
there's
good, man. I'm good at this. You know what I
I
mean?
told you she knows how to get to me. I'll tell you that much.
I live this life, man. I get it. But yeah, I appreciate it, man. The nuggets of truth in so much of what was just said. If you didn't get something out of that today, like, I really don't know what to tell you. There's just, if you want to be better, you get some resources in there. The book Boundaries by Henry Cloud. Take a look at that. Read it, digest it, understand how you create health in yourself, to be able to be a good friend, so on and so forth. Working on the things in you that you want to see in other people, not putting and projecting on other people and putting expectations that are unhealthy on them. Like, there's so many good things and nuggets in there that I hope you could go back and rewatch this and start to make a list of the things that, you want to see in your life. And start to believe that God can do them. And then, as always, I tell you two things. If you really want to change, you really want all of this to impact and have a purpose, start reading your Bible and praying. If you don't do those things, then the rest of it's going to be immensely more difficult, immeasurably more difficult. And so, as always, I'll leave you with those two things. Make sure you spend time with Jesus. He wants you to be like him. When you're like him, people will be attracted to you, and the right people at the right time. And so, become more like him. But I appreciate you, Pastor Mark. Thank you so much for hanging out, coming in, being a part of things. If you have never checked out Lux Digital, you're here for the first time maybe, or you're connecting with Pastor Mark, go check out Lux Digital. We are not personal. I don't even know because I always said kingdom builders, like the opposite. What is this? Like our castle building? We're not castle builders.
Castle building, bro.
We're not here to just build up GSC. We're here to build up the kingdom so that gamers can come to know God, to experience community, to discover their purpose, and then go into the world and make a real difference. And so we believe it with everything that we are. Before we head into the next segment, we're here on Waymaker Week. This is not a fundraiser. This is a faith raiser. This is us giving sacrificially. This is us coming to face to face with God and asking him, Lord, what is it that you'd have me sacrifice? What is it that you'd have me give? Because in each and every one of us, there is a sense of pull towards wanting to keep our treasure and store it here on earth, where it'll pass away, where it will not have eternal significance, where you can be investing in the lives of eternities, storing your treasures in heaven, where it really matters. And so during Waymaker Week, that's what we're here for. That's what we're doing. Man, we love to do this stuff. We wouldn't be in this business if we didn't like to entertain, if we didn't like to have powerful conversations like this one. And so it is a part of it, absolutely. But that's not the reason why we're doing this week. This week is so that you can make a decision maybe that you have maybe not thought of, or take some time and pray and ask the Lord, what is it that you would give? What is it that you would have me give? There's also a matching donation going on right now for any of those that give $100 a month. They're being matched by $100 by Sunny the Money, who is absolutely a tremendous blessing to our church, not just financially, but also her leadership and her growing. And we got to meet her in real life actually when we were at Megazord, which is so much fun. And so, ton of cool things happening, ton of cool things going on. Pastor Mark, where can they find you other than Lux Digital on Twitch, if they're looking to?
You really want to come find me on Twitch? 2 people followed me or something in the middle of this conversation.
Perfect.
I'm Twitch. I'm twitch.tv/TheLift, but I stream like 2 days a week, mostly to connect with our community and, play something. You want to find me, like you can there we go. Someone just followed us. Feel free if you want to stop by, feel free. I'm streaming on Wednesday and Friday morning, but like if your spiritual home is GSC, then be at your spiritual home. So we're here to be a blessing, and GSC is here to be a blessing to us. So make that 3. Thanks, TGI Fishbowl. So come watch me play Destiny poorly.
Amen. All right, GodSquad Church, we love you guys. As always, if no one's told you they love you today, we love you here at GodSquad Church. We're going to roll into a testimony video and just watch what God has begun to do and is continuing to do in the lives of the people that we affect here. What you do matters.
Peace.